Well, good morning, Tavis. How are you today?
Doing well, my friend.
You got to go to the Mavericks game last night, and I might have taught you something that you didn't even know. You have season tickets, and evidently the NBA, this is the first season they're doing the in-season tournament like they do in a lot of the soccer leagues over in Europe. And so they have these crazy floors that they've done, these paint schemes, these crazy paint schemes on the floor. And I saw a little highlight of the Mavericks game last night, and you were there in person. So was it nuts in person? Did it throw you off? Did it help the viewing
Yeah.
experience, or was it just different? Or
No, I think it was cool. I was a little confused. They didn't ever really break it down what it was. They just said, I don't know. The announcers said something about, new court, new court, but don't let that throw off the energy or something, something along those lines. But didn't really identify what the court was for, but it looked like the trophy was the emblem on the floor, so I figured it had to do with something with our Western Conference win last year, but I could be wrong. So I don't
and
know.
I may be
But
wrong, but my
from what you
understanding
said,
is that my understanding is that they're doing these crazy courts whenever it's a in-season tournament game, but I may be wrong. But it did look nuts. A lot of these courts have started making their way into college arenas, specifically Oregon, and I think they look like idiocracy. It's, to me, whenever you're watching, it's kind of hard to follow the ball and all that. Call me old school. I did hear a funny story a couple of years ago. I think the Knicks, maybe, they did a game that was a throwback game as far as audio goes, and they didn't do any of the music that goes constantly. It was just the announcer and maybe like the organ during a timeout or something like that. And they said it was such a crazy, some of the players complained because it was such a crazy difference. It was so quiet during the game, because you go to a game now, I mean, it is just like noise all the time, constant noise. So to go back and only have, you can hear sneakers like chirping on the ground,
and they play
hear them
music,
talking,
and they play music during the plays, so I mean,
which
there's
is
constantly something going
used to
on.
they wouldn't do it. It would just be during timeouts or
Yeah.
whatever, or dead ball type stuff, commercial breaks, of course. But now it's during the game. There's just
Right.
constant music, and then they change it every time there's like a change of possession. It's not like they go through a whole 3-minute song. It's 3 seconds of this and then 10 seconds of that, and holy cow,
Yeah.
that'd be a lot to keep track of. But
Hey,
anyway,
can you hear that background noise?
no,
Do you hear that right now?
no.
Hold on. No, he stopped.
Is your
Chip's
dog
in
doing
here,
something
and he's
weird?
chewing on a dog bone, but it.
I thought you were just hungry.
No, I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be in the background.
can't
But he was
hear him.
sitting outside the
I
door
can't hear him.
whining, so I let him in here.
If you
and
need
now
to let
he's
him in,
sitting
that's
there
fine. But I can't hear
chewing
him,
on
and
bone.
I can
Okay.
cut that noise out. Every once in a while, your automated vacuum will come on, and I do hear that in the background. And whenever I'm editing music or whenever I'm editing the audio, I'll hear the Roomba fire up. I guess it probably fires
That's
at like
funny.
9 o'clock or something.
It does,
Like, it's a
yeah. It's
specific
like
thing.
9 on the money, but it's funny because I just, it's like, it doesn't ever. I'm so used to it, right? I don't even notice it.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So, and I know in your world you're busy. We've actually been talking about preparing for you to be out of town, which is something that it's nice because you're an entrepreneur and you make a lot of your own decisions and you get to do a lot of fun stuff. But when you're busy, you don't have a staff, you don't have an assistant necessarily.
yeah.
When you want to leave town and you've got all these projects juggling, it does sort of make it a little bit more complicated. So I think I am going to step into the big shoes of Tavis Westbrook. I may just take on some design jobs while you're gone too. Just
There
start,
you go.
throwing out some ideas and stuff
Please.
for people. I'll get on Canva and just start moving around some walls.
There you
But yeah,
go.
you're leaving town, and so I'm gonna be doing some project management for you over at Shady Hill, and you're turning one of your midterms during that time, and I will
Yep.
get to sort of a week in the life of Tavis Westbrook, which will be
There
fun.
you
I'm looking forward to it. So
go.
we got to prepare for that, though. We do I get to drive your truck around?
Sure.
The F-250. I need to.
Just don't go over 95 miles an hour because I haven't fixed that problem yet. And then I tell you that no longer is it the
It just
governor
shuts
kicking
down.
it. It just shut down. It's like something, that would keep the fuel from hitting it like the governor should respond, but instead it just shuts the truck off. So yeah.
I mean, maybe all cars should have that feature.
Don't
I mean, you're going over 95 miles an hour. It's not like you're at
Yeah.
78. It's like,
Well,
dude, this
that's
thing won't
what
even
you
get
want to do
going.
with your son's car, right? Keep him from
Yeah.
speeding.
Well, I
It's
was in
like,
the semi truck last week and we were governed at 68.
okay.
So whenever you're on the highway and you see these trucks creeping by each other that are
Yeah.
literally going a half mile faster
And
than
they're
the other
trying to
one, it's
catch the
because
draft.
they're floored. That gas
Yeah.
is floored
Wow.
and it will not go faster. And some of them are
Wow.
just governed slightly different and they'll just get over in the fast lane or one lane over and they'll just creep by them,
Yeah.
get
And
going.
it depends on the
So
draft too, like
yeah.
the wind tunnel, right? Like the NASCAR.
Yeah, it's frustrating because if one of them has a real heavy load, then you go uphill, then you can go past it, but all of a sudden now it's downhill and here they come again. So
Right.
I was frustrated with that because I was just trying to stay in my lane and not run into anybody. And
Oh
some of these other
gosh.
guys are way more comfortable with passing, and I was just trying to trying to hold steady on the wheel whenever they were going by me
Go on. Go.
because the clearance on either side of those is not terribly large. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
so here soon I will be stepping into the Tavis Westbrook shoes, doing project management for a bunch of stuff. Tomorrow, I may. How about this? I will trade places for you when you go on a cruise,
Yeah.
and I'll cut you a discount if tomorrow you take my place and go evict our friend over in Sweetwater and drag all the stuff out to the curb.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow morning. I'm going to leave DFW at around 4 in the morning, and then I'll meet the constable at 9, and then we will spend. The constable said we have 2 hours to get all of our stuff out, um, and then after that he will stay there, but we have to pay him more. So if the drag out takes more than 2 hours, he starts charging money. So
Did you set up a dumpster people yet, or a trash out company?
Friday, yeah, Friday. I've had several people from Abilene. I've reached out to Ryan, and I think honestly, it'll just be easier if I get an Abilene guy to go over on
Mm-hmm.
Friday and just take it to the dump. Tomorrow, Luke and a friend are going to come down from Tech
Oh,
and
okay.
help out. And funny enough, I actually have a friend who is a member of the Mormon Church, and I was talking to him. He actually does evictions. That's all he does is like he
Oh,
works for
wow.
a big rental company.
Okay.
And he's like, man, Sweetwater. He's like, do you know anyone over there? I was like, no. He's like, man, I got an idea. Let me try to find some of the missionaries over there because they're always looking for something
Oh,
to do. They
wow.
need service hours. So
Oh,
he's going to try to see if there's any of the young missionaries over there in Sweetwater. He's like,
okay.
dude, if you'll just buy them donuts and orange juice, like they will love to be there. So
Wow.
that would be a
Okay.
funny day.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, he's going to try to help
Not
me
only
out a
did
little
I get
bit. He's
evicted, but they showed up with the whole Mormon church to move me out.
Yeah, a bunch of guys in ties evicted me yesterday. But yeah, they super sweet guys though. I mean, they actually run a car show. So Charlie and his crew runs a car show, and all the
Yeah.
young missionaries are there, kind of organizing it. Super nice, hardworking guys. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. So tomorrow's the day. I will be over there at 9. We will drag
All
everything
right.
out to the curb, leave it there, and then be done with that phase. I'll have to get a locksmith,
What a
change things
pain.
out, and
Almost
yeah,
what?
and then
Just at like 2 years since you bought that property from me, and unfortunately,
yeah,
here you
probably
are.
close to 2 years. Yeah. But I'm glad it's moving in the direction. And if I can get that
Yeah.
one agent over there tomorrow, once it kind of cleans out, and then that way she can start maybe showing it to some investors, and we can just start getting some offers on that
Yeah.
and move on. So anyway, over here, I've got we did a really good open house last week, really busy open house. So this speaks to the market, and this kind of is exactly how you've been doing it. We talked about our friend Gene. They did a really good flip over in Dallas. Took them about a year to do a super good quality flip, and I helped with the open house. Well, it was busy. I mean, we had constant flow of people. A lot of times there was multiple groups in there, so luckily there was two of us there. Gene, I was there with Gene, and a lot of them were neighbors. But so we had evidently Saturday was the same way. We had that Sunday, and she's only had one scheduled showing. But that one scheduled showing expressed a lot of interest and had said that they were going to write an offer. So it's just really weird, the flow of things. I know you've seen that the last couple of times you've put something up on the market.
Yep. The good news is, though, Aubrey closed. And
there you go.
So that one closed and funded Friday. And then this week, Verlaine closed and funded, I believe it was yesterday or day before.
Okay.
So, so we're good. I've got basically all the flips are sold, and I'm currently empty-handed on inventory except for one. I've got an escrow that's in Garland, keeps getting extended. But it gets extended because it's not quite, well, it's an estate in the sense that she's not mentally capable of making decisions. So they had to get what's called a guardianship, and that had to go through kind of a legal process similar to probate. And they had to put out like a news article 10 days out to see if anybody would object and things like that. So based on her medical history, and I guess she had some dementia, there were some things that, said that she wasn't capable to sign the power of attorney and different things. So now they had to go through the channels. So it's taken some time, and, it's Dallas County as well. So they don't get in a rush or anything. But anyway, so we should be closing that one. But the good news and the bad news is I usually don't like doing this, but looking back, especially after what happened with Aubrey and the timing of the market and things shifting, I went back in and looked at my numbers again for the Garland house. And I'm like, man, I looked at this originally in like August, September. We're now in November. Like, let me double check it. And so I went back in, and I was able to do an amendment and adjust the numbers with us pushing out the closing and reduce the price by $15,000. And I think that will put me in a lot better position, especially now that we're looking at not taking possession to the end of November and then rolling into December and then January, so.
That's a hard conversation to have, though. I mean, you don't want to take advantage.
It is.
You don't want to seem like that you're just doing that to try to take advantage of them. But if it's the reality, and plus, I mean, there are concessions. It's like, hey, you've been flexible, but then the gamble is like, okay, yeah, well, we don't want to do that. And you could either walk away or,
sure. Well, and there was another investor on board in the beginning too. So I thought, hey, this might be tough. I might lose this deal. Yeah. But I didn't want to be another break-even deal, right? So I didn't want it to be another Aubrey deal where I'm like literally breaking even. I don't need the practice.
Yeah.
So,
but that's just
and it ties up capital and everything else. So it's like, it doesn't make sense to do it that way. So I needed that
discipline it takes to do that is that only comes with practice. I think. I mean, you've had and you honestly you've had a good year, so maybe if you'd had a really tough year and it's like, man, I just need something to work and maybe you would have taken it, but you've had a really good year. You've had how many units have you closed? I
think we're at, if I get this one, I think it'll be 10. If this closes before the end of the year, I think it'll be 10.
That's amazing. So, that's awesome.
I know it's good to
that was your goal,
back up.
So for you to do it. Yeah.
Man,
that's
next
amazing.
year I'd like to push it to 20. I'm going to kind of say conservatively 15. Just I don't know what the market's going to do with opportunities, but I think it's opportunities have been pretty good lately. I mean, I think it's today, a neighbor from Wiley, from the Wiley house early on this year, reached out to me
Yeah.
and wants to sell his house as is. So I think I'm going out there
Wow.
later today. I need to look at the calendar. But yeah, so I mean, it's some of those things like that. I think just people are looking at, the convenience factor. So the phone's ringing. I'm getting leads. I'm getting opportunities. I've got a mid-century one that I really want that's in Garland. But again, you just got to take the emotion out of it and look at the numbers game. And I think we're about 20,000 apart probably. But it just knowing mid-century too, as much as they're cool and they have a huge demand on the backside when they're done right, they also require a lot of capital because they're unique and you have to do things a certain way in order to attract that certain client that appreciates a mid-century.
I don't know, man.
Right.
I think someone could go in there and just do like new carpet and just kind of spray the cabinets in the kitchen and do like some brushed chrome handles from Home Depot and just do a pretty decent job on it. So, well, let's talk about a little bit of the market update. So, one number that was interesting to us when we were kind of reviewing for today, or it was interesting to me. Again, there's a decent chance I'm just hitting the wrong button, and someone who actually knows what they're talking about would be like, you don't, these numbers are wrong. But it does look like when we look back 10 years, the new listings for October of 2024 was 14,887. And these, I'm sure this is just for residential, 14,887. When I looked back 10 years, that is the highest October in the last 10 years by far. I mean, there's certain Octobers
highest
that are
inventory.
No, new listings for that month.
Okay.
So we're at 42,000 units right now. And when we looked back originally, the 44,000 was the high. For some reason, that number is revised. And so I don't even want to pretend to know why, but it was 44,000 in 2019. And October is always around 11,000 new units. That's very consistent. 11,000, 10, 11. And now this year we're at 14,887 in October. So that is, that's a 2,000 to 3,000 unit jump. So statistically, it's a very different number of new units coming on when it's already high. And so I don't know if there's just a backlog in desire to move, and it's just like, hey, we just need to go ahead, because the interest rates aren't amazing right now. We're in it's winter. Like there's not, I don't know what would be prompting a bunch of people to sell. So it'll be interesting to see what November does, because we also have the factor in November. So the November's numbers will show all the people who said, well, I'm going to wait for the election to happen. And whether that was real or not, there are, I'm sure, some people out there that were just kind of waiting to see what the environment was going to be like. And okay, yeah, all right, I'm comfortable. I'm going to go ahead and list the house. So maybe November is going to bump. I don't know, but that is a different number. But we do have 42,000 homes for sale currently on our MLS, and let's see, 4.6 months of inventory. That's gone down from 4.7. Our days on market, let's look at that just real quick. We've been hovering around the mid 40s. Yeah, so we're over, average is 58 for the entire MLS, 52 for Denton, 46 for Dallas.
You know what's interesting though is if you, and this is kind of exciting. We had in this last week, it looks like 2,930 new listings. And if you scroll down to active option, there's 1,344 that went under contract. So that's about 50%. And then pendings is 2,031. So
your numbers are
it's a little bit more than
2001. But yeah, the price decreases. But with the one we've been looking at is how many price decreases. I show 43.16. And, with inventory at 42, that's over 10% of the homes had a price decrease, which is
And then
insane.
we've
Unless
got
you're
22. I showed 2,200 and change for closed properties in the last 7 days. So, So that's cool. I mean, to me, we talk about it and we're kind of like, oh man, this is bad, right? We got more inventory than we've ever had. We've got stuff, we've got these price reductions, right? Like, I mean, when you see 2,900 new listings and 4,300 price decreases in the last 7 days,
Mm-hmm.
we're on this trend that we keep talking about over and over again about
Mm-hmm.
pricing and marketing and looking at it. But I've really, like, I had an agent yesterday reach out to me with a property she's got on the market. They just did a price reduction. She's like, hey, I saw your post. I know that you really want to close something before the end of the year. I have one that you could buy, and I haven't even looked it up yet, but she just kind of gave me the high level of it. It's in Wiley. And
Mm.
she's like, we had one, the same exact floor plan, sold back in May, for this number. And I'm like, that's great, but it was May and we can't use those numbers.
Right. Right.
like I
Yeah.
hate that.
Yeah.
Like I really hate that we're having this conversation again, like 2022, when
Sure.
the interest rates changed and we're like, we can't use April and May statistics anymore. We just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's similar here, even though there's not like a huge turn or reason why, because interest rates are actually better, I think, right now than they were in April and May, right? So
Mm.
that's the biggest issue that you kind of scratch your head because we're like, what's going on? Like, what's
Yeah.
really the reasoning with all of these changes and the difference in the market? It's hard to put our finger on it, and that's why we're struggling as a community to figure out the navigation, And when she
Yeah.
told me
But
that
the nice thing
yesterday,
for
that
you, nice thing for you is like to me, this is the environment where more and more people are going to reach out, and
yeah,
they're
absolutely,
going to become more of a distressed seller, and they've just got to get rid of it. And the next 6 months to a year could be an amazing influx of that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
um,
Absolutely. You just
hopefully
got
I
to be
can get in a
really careful
position to
on
take advantage of that
ARV.
too.
I mean, ARV
Yeah,
is
you've got a
is
really
so
cheap lower on the
subjective.
ARV. Yep.
Yeah,
You've really got
because
to really got a buffer.
yeah, like she was giving me that comp for May. I'm like, sorry, I can't use it. I need to look at, and I've been saying 90 days. I'm a little uneasy with that. Like right now, it's like let me look at really. I want to look at what's going on in September and October and November right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I want
Mm-hmm.
to look last 60 days and really see, what's it telling me? What's going on?
Yeah.
So,
For sure. All right, let's talk about a little bit of news. In the news, our friends at Dallas Morning News, the paper that we read
those guys.
so studiously every day. Our friends at Plano ISD are doing something really cool. They passed a bond this last election cycle, or maybe the one before. It was 1.5 billion or something, but part of that was a $72 million career and technical education center. So they're breaking ground. And we know they're breaking ground because there's a picture there of all the people that have no business being at a construction site with gold shovels, and they're throwing dirt in the air like they're just getting to work. And then they're going to put that down and go have mimosas or something because they all look very awkward.
What
But
shoes are they
the
wearing?
construction workers
That's
that
the
are
real
10 feet
tell off.
away, well, there's high heels. I see at least one pair of high heels, one pair of Jordans. Um, so yeah, so the workers behind them, 10 feet out of the picture, are anxiously ready with their backhoe to get actually moving. And but what's really neat is I know that Louisville ISD has something similar to this, but this place sounds awesome. It's going to include 17 programs. So if, Tony and Guy's doing a hairdressing academy.
Mm-hmm.
Toyota of North America is doing a cybersecurity education part of it.
Oh wow.
They're going to have a
Okay.
culinary arts program with a restaurant that's going to be open to the public. So
Nice.
this is at Alma and Park, I think is what they said over there,
Oh.
which makes sense because there's a big old farm there. Some rancher just got rich. Um, there's going to be a car collision repair program, audio, video, health science, of course, welding, the woodworking. They're also doing robotics, graphic design, marketing, finance, entrepreneurship. Just really, really neat. But the idea that they're going to have an actual restaurant that you can go to. The other cool thing is I was reading this article. They're going to have they teamed up with a credit union, and they're going to run an actual bank that
Oh,
is run mostly by students in the program, and it's going to have some employees of this bank there, and they're going to be running a credit union, and
oh wow.
so super cool. All these alternative career type things I think are amazing, and something that's going to, I think, should become more and more a part of the education system
Yeah.
as we move forward, because these are the types of things that people can hold on to and actually get jobs either directly out of high school or just give them a lifelong skill set that they could use and, always fall back on. I mean, I wish I learned how to weld way back when. That would be really neat. I've tried to learn in the last year, and I'm decent, but I'm not,
You did good. And
I'm
you made your
definitely.
own rails, didn't you, at Mapleton?
I did not make those rails. No, your
Oh, you
guy did.
didn't
Your
do that?
roofer. No, I wish I
Oh,
did.
Saul did that? Oh, okay. I
Saul did
thought you
that.
had. Yeah.
I helped weld believe it or not, my welding has gone to the band. I welded a bunch of frames for the props last year, and they reused them this year. And Luke and I welded a bed frame together. Actually, we did a project for his room a few years ago, and it was kind of part welding, part woodworking. And so that was cool. Uh, Harbor Freight's the best for all that. They have cheap welders and kind of make them easy to use, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not like the highest end deal, but it gets the job done. So, but good for Plano. It's really neat. $72 million center that's going to be going in, and it seems like I would love to go just check that restaurant out just to support them. So another thing that just stuck out on Dallas Morning News is there's a place up in Denton. We were talking about Bitcoin last week. A company that had filed bankruptcy in the last couple of years has come out of bankruptcy. They mine Bitcoin, and they are actually putting $4 billion into switching over their Bitcoin mining operation to an AI data center. So all of this stuff is so far over my head. I have no idea, but they are spending $4 billion in Denton,
Wow.
and they're expanding like 72,000 square feet of computer space to put into AI. And so this just goes more and more like the tentacles of DFW are reaching further north. Sherman has the semiconductors. Now Denton is getting a huge influx of money for AI conversion, and that's all along that 380 corridor. It's on the right side of Denton, right at 380. So I mean that'll run right over. Very easy to get over to Sherman. Well, I say easy. Right now it's a beating, but at some point it'll be easy to get over there.
Yeah, for sure.
380, good grief, man. I mean, I am no
Yeah.
thanks, but
You
yeah,
don't
interesting
drive
that
on there without sitting in some type of traffic.
nope. And two of our schools we played this year were, so two of my first experiences in the semi truck were on 380, and it's
No.
just stop
Oh
and go,
gosh.
stop and go, stop and go. Yeah. Um, so on the news this morning and on the ticket, they were talking about how the DFW airport is opening up, or they're starting breaking ground. So a bunch of fancy people in high heels went out to the DFW airport, took the same shovels, and broke ground on a new terminal, a $1.6 billion 15 gate terminal at DFW airport, which will open in 2027. And
Mm.
they're calling it Terminal F. That will be Terminal F. And then they're also going to renovate terminals A and C. They say C is the busiest one, and it's also the most outdated.
Mm.
So A and C are getting renovated. Brand new F and D actually was done a few years ago, and it's really nice. So I think if you fly international right now, you might fly out of Terminal D, and
Yeah,
it's really cool.
D
Like
is the newest.
yeah,
I think it's the
yeah,
newest
that's a
out
good
of
one.
everything. I think they redid B, as in Bravo. I
Okay,
think B was renovated.
yeah, it's becoming quite the mess to go drop people off and pick people up over there. It's just you really have to pay attention. There's so many exits and loop arounds, and I remember when I lived in LA, I was the airport pickup guy
Yeah.
for a lot of my friends because I had a car my junior year, and so someone would fly in or out, and I would fly over to LAX or drive over to LAX. It was about 45 minutes, so I actually spent a lot of time going in and out of LAX, and the big difference there is they do not play around. Like you pause for 30 seconds, and they are
Yeah.
all over you. And so if your person is not actively getting in the car, they're like loop around, do not sit here.
Yeah.
and it's police people. It's not some person in an orange vest. It's a police officer saying
Yeah.
leave. And so, it was Dallas, especially Love Field. People will kind of come up and park right there for a little while, but no, LAX does not play.
Yeah.
DFW is getting a big influx of money, a couple $1 billion, new terminal. They say it's going to really increase the volume there, which is cool. I've heard rumors, a couple people recently talking about maybe expanding an airport up near McKinney or Sherman. There's a bunch of people fighting against it in McKinney. They do not want jet service, like large jet service there. I guess there is an airport up in Sherman area that can accommodate large jets, 747 style jets. And so we've actually mentioned it on the podcast before that northeast corner could use an airport. I mean, if you live up in you live in Sherman, Denison, all that stuff. I mean, to get to DFW, it takes a while, and Love Field for sure. So, if they could expand up there,
would enjoy that too.
Yeah. Oklahoma, and with all the money going into Texoma and Sherman, and even over Princeton and Rowlett, Rockwall, all those people would probably, opt for that. Although it won't be a huge place. So, the NAR, our friends at the National Association of Realtors, were in the news this last week. So it's a nonprofit, believe it or not, and they do lobbying, and they've been in the news for all sorts of wrong reasons for the last year. Well, another wrong reason is their CEO, Bob Goldberg, old Bob. He is under scrutiny as a nonprofit exec for making $2.6 million in his salary. And also with a lot of his lavish lifestyle. And I always get caught up on wording in articles, but one of the things they got caught up on was that they paid for a trip that included his dog. They had to pay extra for his dog to fly with him somewhere. And evidently, lots of restaurants, and he's a member of an exclusive country clubs. He's flying first class. He's got an expensive car allowance. And then the kicker, this is just what infuriated people. And they said, enough is enough. They even bought him tickets to Hamilton, and it was at the height of the musical's popularity. They needed to put that in this article. He got tickets to Hamilton when it was actually popular. And they was like, this is enough. So this guy's making several $1 million representing realtors, and it's a nonprofit. And I mean, if you're running a huge organization, I don't fault you for making a lot of money, because I'm sure it's a lot of moving parts and they need a specific caliber of executive to do that. But probably not the best time for them to be making news in this fashion, because I think realtors are looking, and MLSs and brokerages, not MLSs, but brokerages are looking for reasons to not be associated with the NAR. And
now they're coming out. I mean, because of their lawsuit and their mistakes and their stuff from a board of directors level, now they're coming out and saying, okay, everybody, it's mandatory. You have to take this code of ethics 3-hour class before the end of the year.
Oh yeah.
Which, I mean, I did a code of ethics, and I get it. It can't be necessarily a bad thing to, say, hey, do the right thing. At the end of the day, that's what code of ethics is. But they, but now it's mandatory, or they're going to cut off your MLS access. And I mean, I did it originally 20 years ago, right, when I became a member of, the National Association of Realtors, and now all of a sudden it's become a thing. And I'm sure it's because of all this controversy and changes and buyer's rep agreements and, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's just become such a controversy, and people can't seem to get it right. I told you about it briefly yesterday. My cousin lives in Kerrville, Texas, Hill Country, which is, you said about 2 hours south of, is it quite 2 hours? Probably an hour and a half. I mean, it's in between San Antonio and Austin. And beautiful area, but nevertheless, we're looking at a property and trying to buy it. And she calls off a sign. It's a big producer down there, EXP agent. And she's got a big team. I guess my cousin said, she's everywhere, or her team's everywhere. So,
Yeah.
anyways, calls the sign, gets an agent that's assigned to the team to call her, ends up showing her the house, ends up, and my cousin's like, oh, I want to make an offer, which I've helped her buy 2 other houses. So, she was in a rush. She kind of like, it was 3 days on market, got emotionally tied to it, kind of did some things backwards, from like, hey, I want to write an offer, which didn't secure like total financing and figuring out her numbers and all this stuff beforehand.
Mm.
So long story short, she basically comes to me after the fact and says, hey, I made an offer on this house and I signed a bunch of paperwork and it's all through dot loop or whatever. And she tries to send it to me. I can't open it. Young story, but she sends it to me and I start reviewing it. And I'm like, well, hey, there's this document in here about commissions, which it might be their attorney structured it because I didn't see form 2406 on it, but it kind of had the same language.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't identify who's paying the buyer's agent commission in the structure of the offer, right? So it was like the buyer commission agreement with the buyer's rep agreement, but it didn't specify in the contract anywhere who's paying this fee. And we know from doing the podcast that EXP is no longer doing a broker, cooperation agreement. So therefore, it only can be paid, from the seller directly to the buyer's agent agreement. And in this case, the team is representing the seller, and then you got a team associate. So there's a little bit of conflict, and there wasn't an intermediary form in there. Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff missing, kind of a new agent thing. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, she's like, what do I have to do to fire her and hire you? I just need you. I just need you to do it. I'm like, look, I'm here. I'm not there. You already signed an agreement. Like,
Right.
and she's protected on commission now with that house because you agreed with that house, yada yada.
Right.
And so I think we got it settled down, and maybe I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but I finally got her to calm down and like strategize the solution. But my point to that is, I understand why the ethics things happen because that kind of stuff right there, like it's not very clear. It made it way more complicated in a scenario now than it did before when the commission was already identified. The seller is going to pay it based on the listing agreement. If you have a team, a big team, and you assign somebody to the team, then essentially, yes, you would have an appointment, an intermediary with appointment to represent both parties and work it out. But in this case, it's kind of taken us back 30 years ago to where the listing agent and her team are in charge of this listing. So my cousin felt like she didn't feel like she had anybody fighting for her, and she was like, you work for this boss and therefore you're representing me, but this is your boss that you're arguing with to try to make this deal work for me. So how does this all make sense?
I think, I understand it. Whether you have a huge office like DPR, we technically are all under the same broker, but I feel like we don't really function as a team. If I've bought a house from Crystal Zielinski before.
Right. Now this is more like one of the big mega teams, like the Empower Home Group. Yeah,
but I'm saying like that seemed like we were just 2 separate agents who were just getting along.
Absolutely.
But I felt like I was really advocating for my people, and there was no, hey, let's try to make this work out, because we're DPR. Like, but if you're in a team and you're all doing team meetings and stuff, I could see how it would just be like, hey, these are good sellers. And I don't know. I think it'd be very, very difficult, but yeah, if we need to find or someone down there, I can call Dustin today, but if this one falls through and she wants help, local help, maybe either he can or knows somebody that might be able to help down there. So, well, also in the news, a couple more quick stories. The CEO of Compass Realty, it's a large brokerage. He made news this last week because he made the quote, my view is that Zillow is going to be the next MLS. It's only a matter of time. And this was at a big conference for NAR. So I'm sure that went over well. But yeah, so his view is Zillow has positioned itself to take over the function of the MLSs and be more of an actual utilitarian thing for realtors, where buyers and sellers have very similar views of information, and that negotiations will come down to skill of agent and less about um, opacity of information, I think is what he said. So he feels like there's still sort of you have an upper hand because you have certain information, and they think Zillow is working towards being this middle ground where everyone's going to have the same type of information, and then it's just going to be about the deal. So who knows? Zillow is definitely figuring out ways to reinvent itself and stick around. So I wouldn't doubt it if they have a plan and they can make that happen. And, to be honest, NAR and their rules and all that are making it hard. One of the rules that came up that I wanted to ask you about for DPR, so are you familiar with clear cooperation policy? This is one of the controversial policies of NAR. Clear cooperation says it requires that any property publicly marketed by a realtor be listed on an MLS within 1 business day. And so a lot of people, especially like in Utah, Colorado, are saying, this definitely works against pocket listings. And this is the NAR saying, you have to participate in the MLS if you want to be a realtor. Well, my question is, how does KW do their pocket listing service, their private, put on private collection, because that's not an MLS, but it's publicly marketed. So to me,
it's controversial to our listing agreements, because our listing agreements state, a section in a listing agreement that you can actually opt out of the MLS, and you can opt out of, posting it that way. So
right,
it really kind of comes down to a seller, a buyer and seller, or a seller and an agent conversation to decide what the seller wants to do. Now, if it is, I don't disagree,
but I'm saying if the MLS is like, hey, you have to, like, I don't know what the recourse is if they find out, but I mean, to me, there's 200 and something properties on private collection right now. It's kind of our own little pocket listing, and that they encourage us to advertise that to sellers and buyers.
And that's because you have companies like Zillow that are, getting this information now that they're a member of NAR. Zillow is now in a position to, to get the sales data, and that's something that all the local boards and people were fighting for a while back, because didn't want a company like Zillow to get the sales data, because Zillow is a public facing company. That again, it goes back. Here's the thing: how many times do you and I have controversy about comps even pulling the same data? Like now you give it to consumers that are not in real estate and expect them to understand and break down the data with the same, mindset. It's all over the place, right? Like, you need professionals that do this every day. It's just like, an argument with a consumer that looks at the stock market data versus a stockbroker that does it every day and is going to have a different opinion based on what the data shows them. So I think it's still important to kind of look at that. Just because
I think public data is important, and maybe that's what this is built around, in theories, because they're basically saying we want you to make a formal listing for anything that's going to be out there. But if it's a pocket listing and someone's selling it and someone buys it, it's recorded at the courthouse. But the ebbs and flow of how long was it available, what was the original asking price, what was the final sales price, like all those things could be veiled if it's not that person is not participating in MLS. And so it does cloud overall market statistics if enough people did that. But I mean, when you have 200, we talked about there's 42,000 listings on the MLS, and our private collection has 200. That's not swaying the market,
right.
Even if all of those came and went without any recording of what it was. So, but I guess in theory, if enough people played along with that and went directly to private collection, or did like a Zillow type thing where you had a forum to list something where a lot of people could see it and didn't necessarily put it on the quote unquote MLS. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Part of the NAR deal is a clear cooperation policy. This is one of the policies that a lot of local realtor groups and brokerages are fighting against, specifically in like the mountain states for whatever reason that pops up. So anyway, so our last segment that we have been toying with the last several times is an interesting property in DFW, and we did find one today. I have been shocked with how many horse properties are in and around Dallas, and I guess these pop up because these are pretty significantly expensive. They're large acreage, but I guess I just didn't realize how many people were into horses. That sounds stupid, but there's just a lot of these things that just have these big old horse barns and horse farms and all that stuff. Well, we found one over in Flower Mound, but the reason that this specific listing stood out is that the unique opportunity it is. And I would say that the agent did. This is a weird listing. Let's just again, I would have probably made this a land listing that happens to have structures on it, as opposed to putting a house and saying that this is for sale it looks like it's a house for sale that's on 17 acres. But the one we're talking about is 3521 Sentinel Oak Road in Flower Mound. And what's crazy is what caught my eye is the very first picture is this super modern house in the middle of Flower Mound, in the middle of a big old piece of property. It's this big white box modern-y house. But after those first two pictures, that's the only reference to that house. Everything else is showing the property. It shows a horse. It shows a barn. It shows this little Alamo outhouse. And it's by the lake, technically. And then when you read the description, I needed Tavis to interpret this, because here's the description. The description. A remarkable 14 property estate nestled in Flower Mound, encompassing 17 acres and bordered by a half-mile along Grapevine Lake. The estate comprises of 13 fee simple deeded properties and a unique 20-year ACOE lease, all thoughtfully assembled over 18 years. And then at the bottom it says it's 17.1 acres, 13 are deeded, 4.1 are leased, totaling 17. So Tavis, explain what this, we finally deciphered what this property is. So kind of explain what this is and probably who it's meant for.
Yeah. So the 20-year lease is essentially from what it appears to me, and I don't know exactly what the acronym ACOE stands for, but I believe based on the context of the other parts of the listing, this is related to 4.1 acres being a leased property. So what that means is there's a lease in place that has to do with agricultural land, and most likely has to do with the equestrian component here with the horses. But essentially 4.1 acres out of this total 17.1 acre tract is leased, agriculturally leased with a 20-year lease that's in place. And I assume it says assembled over 18 years, so maybe there's 2 years left on it. I don't know, that we're missing some information here. Right. And then there's 13 fee simple deeded properties within this tract. So what that means is basically they're saying, okay, you've got 13 1 acre tracts that are separated property technically that could be divided up, that have already been delegated fee simple within the 17 acre tract. So essentially they're promoting a development sell price, or a development sell property is what they're really promoting here, but it is not very it is not very clear on what it is. And to your point, it shouldn't have been listed in the residential MLS. It should have been in the land MLS for something with a developer mindset, because it is misleading and there's not really much about the house here. So I don't know if they double listed it. You might have to look and see if it is on the
I looked
land
at the
site.
land. I looked under land and it didn't pop up. So
It
I'm
didn't
not
pop
saying
up. Okay.
it's not anywhere out there or they're cross marketing it somehow, but it's not listed under land. And we've talked about this several times. This is my Keller property. That was the debate. Do we list it as land that happens to have a house or a house that happens to have land? We did better to do land that happens to have a house because the house was just secondary. And that seems to be the case here because there's no interior pictures of this house. They don't really
Yeah.
describe it much at all. It's more about the property and its proximity to the lake and all that. But beautiful. It's $24 million, but it does seem like they are going after developers. But what's crazy to me about this is just the idea that an agent, and good for this guy, he's not a new agent, but he's not an old timer. He gets this listing of a $24 million property.
Mm-hmm.
He gets professional pictures and he's maybe doing the best he can, but it's so unique that like all the word salad and all that in the description, like it took me a while to even like, what is this? And why are there not pictures of the house? And so to me, it's just like, what's the purpose of putting it out? And maybe just to let people know it's out there. But anyway, it's even people who stand to make a ton of money on a sale, and it's still a difficult thing to find the right way to market a house. And it's only been on the market 3 days. It might be gone by next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the right people will
and
find out about
they
it.
have it
probably,
under
so.
like proposed use as agricultural commercial development equine, which is horses or equestrian, investment, mixed use, or orchids, vineyards or vineyards, pasture, ranch, recreational. So like they basically checked all the boxes. Like, hey, this thing could be whatever you want it to be, but it isn't very clear. It would have been much easier just to say development opportunity for 13-acre tract, 13, individual properties, upon 17 acres.
4 are leased for 20 years, but you can develop 13 1-acre tracts for a perfect neighborhood. Like,
yeah.
Yes. So, good for this guy. I hope
it also has a half mile of core lakefront property.
Yeah.
But they don't really talk about that too much in there either. So
no, I mean, there's no dock. So yeah, unique property. There's moral of the story. There's crazy unique properties all over Dallas. And I love looking through here and finding things like I had no idea this was even a thing, but it's great and beautiful and right in the middle of town. And we'll keep an eye on that. So, well, that is our show for today. Oh, go ahead. Maybe it's not. I was going to say, do you have more?
No, I was going to back up. You had mentioned about the listing agreement and the violation with NAR and the 1-day rule. I snapshotted something and screenshotted it over to you. There is an option, which again, this is a Texas Real Estate or Texas Association of Realtors form that is TXR 1101. And this is our listing agreement that DPR asks us to use when we're listing properties. And when you go through this, there is section 6, which talks about you're going to list the properties, on MLS within 5 days or before the listing begins. Although it does state in there, unless your MLS, so your MLS rules may be different than whatever your local real estate or whatever your local association rules may require. So in our case, it does say MLS rules require that the broker file this listing on the MLS within 1 business day. That is an option that we're up against that you had mentioned. But if you check box 2, which is broker will not file the listing with any multiple listing service or other listing service, then it gives you a whole like rule sheet essentially underneath it that you can't publicly make this property available outside, to public knowledge within, any kind of website or anything like that, because then you would be in a violation. So the private collection,
and maybe that's why it's called private collection, and that's like you
exactly.
Have to have
it's an internal
agreement to like send them stuff.
Essentially, it's an internal, pocket listing option for our office that we're able to do that. And Go Network, which is, made up of multiple offices within our KW, franchise, is, they're talking about private collection is almost up to $1 billion worth of real estate sold this year, using private collection. So, you definitely have brokerages like ours that is pushing this, to do it more of the old school, and sellers are preferring this. In a lot of cases, they may not want their neighbors to know that they're selling. They may not want the public riffraff. They may not want, the constant
They may not
showings.
want a podcast making fun of their listing
because
they did a bad job of throwing it up there.
So anyways, I just wanted to finish with that. But just because we were on that point, I wanted to just show you that.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. So that's our show for today. If you have not, please like, subscribe, share this with a friend. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, and we are within a week or so of getting to the new studio. It didn't happen this week, but getting close and getting all those details figured out on how to change up the look and all that. So it is right around the corner. Please let us know if there's anything that you would love for us to touch on or educate on. We have not done a lot of very specific investors education in a while. So we've talked about maybe hopping back into that and refreshing some of our Flipping University episodes or something like that. If there's a specific topic that you would like us to dive deep on, or do a deal breakdown, we've done that before, where we look at the numbers of one of the flips and say, hey, here's what the buy price and here's what's the rehab, and those are interesting episodes as well. So if any of that is interesting, please reach out to us and let us know. And until next time, hope you have a great day.